Thanks for joining us today, you guys. We are back with part 4 of my interview with Rob Hamilton. Rob and I are just wordy enough that we could not split this into 2 episodes. It had to get extended to 4. So I hope that you find the content as valuable as I did. I thought Rob had so much valuable information to share that I didn't want to cut it off at the 2-episode arc. So here we are finishing off the 4-episode arc. So listen up. Here we go.
Let me put this to you. So this is from, we have this musician handbook that I just sort of sat down and wrote just for my own kind of like, to just try to get my thoughts kind of organized about, what it's like to be a musician in this band and to answer all the questions and that somebody might have. So when somebody says to me, like, how do I like get up on the call list with side one? So I'm kind of made this list, and this is in no particular order. So the execution of the material, if I have somebody that's shows up and has the whole book memorized, I was like, great. Oftentimes, because we're playing 80 tunes a night, it can be like, to memorize, if you're a singer, all of those lyrics. I mean, that's a lot, right? So we say, yes, you can have your iPad. Don't sing into your iPad. Just use it as a thing. But, part of your job is to try to, as a front person, just try to connect with your audience. And if you're, essentially just staring down, well, it's the world's most expensive karaoke. Yep. So we kind of give people a little bit of a leeway. We say, depending on how much they're working with the band, but after like a dozen gigs, maybe we would like to see that iPad just as not the central figure on stage. You try to emote a little bit more and not rely on it. So the execution of the material. Here's another thing: correspondence with us. As you probably know, just some people are hard to get a hold of, right?
Not only but they don't read the email. They read the first line and none of the rest of the body of the email.
Yeah. And that's on me too. I want to make if people aren't reading my emails, I should internalize that too. I'm not putting them in a way that's interesting for people to read them. Yeah. Yep. So, and we've all got those emails from band leaders that is just like, oh, Jesus Christ. This is like reading the cremation of Sam McGee or something like that. It's just going to be like, I got to put an afternoon aside just to sort of get through this goddamn email. Yeah. So I, from the person trying to make the correspondence, I try to make it digestible. But yeah, responding to emails or texts or something like that, that's gonna factor into things with us. How many years with the band? That's gonna be important. This is an interesting one. Agreeableness. Yeah. I don't want the sort of, I've been the disagreeable one in many, many bands. And those are bands that I left. But, the guy that's always sticking his heels in for every single thing, the jaded, musician. So that speaks volumes to us, like somebody that's just like, hey, and this can come in many different ways. If I see people reposting, if I tag them on Instagram or something like that, I'll be like, yeah, this person is not ashamed of us or something like that. I'm not saying that that's the soul, I want to see you be rah, rah, rah for side one, but it does I would, given, as you said earlier, between two people, that are exactly the same, all things being equal, somebody that's proud of us and is reposting stuff. Yeah, for sure. I'm going to favor them a little bit more. Here's a big one for me: adaptability / perseverance. So gigs are not always perfect, as you know. Yes. In fact, they're rarely perfect. And people's ability to roll with those things speaks volumes for us. So, we've worked with those people where they spend, gets to their turn for the monitor, and it's they're going to eat up 45 minutes with the sound tech trying to, squeak out that, every possible frequency. Yeah. And then complain that, they need more high end. And, or, whatever. They're, we've stopped at Starbucks and they want some mom and pop, locally owned, organic. And it's like, okay, or you lower the window on the car and they're like, can we put that up? Or they put on the heat, or just like, it just becomes like unmanageable at a certain point. So like, yeah, just, as I said, perseverance, rolling with it. That's oftentimes, on these trips, we're going into the Okanagan. You're going to spend 5 hours in a car with somebody. You're going to spend 8 hours on the gig with somebody. You're going to stay in the same hotel room as somebody. The next day, you got to do the same thing again, come back. Maybe it's a trip to Whistler next. So we want everybody on our team to just be like, you don't have to be like, you won't have to cut your arm off if you're stuck between two rocks kind of thing on a side one gig, hopefully. But we're going to try to make it easy for you. But should something out of the norm happen, we see that as really valuable.
Yeah.
Punctuality. That's obvious, just, and kind of what that means as well. Like if it says, band starts at 8 o'clock kind of thing. That doesn't always, that doesn't even always mean the case, especially if we're dealing with a wedding. As more often than not, a wedding is running behind. But there's times when, so when we say like cocktail hour, like say we have a little, I'm playing the ceremony and then, there's a duo playing cocktail hour. And it says in our app, like cocktail hour starts at 5. It could be actually earlier if the ceremony goes through really quickly. It's better to say cocktail hour starts after the ceremony. It doesn't start at 5. 5 is a good estimate, but like be there ready to go. So we have this nice smooth, like think about things from your client's perspective. How is this day going to go? It's like, no. You said 5 o'clock and in the wedding planner's timeline. So we're not going to, it's like, really, so we always just say like, be a little heads up. And so punctuality doesn't just mean downbeat it means, and God bless Google Maps, like in traffic and all this kind of thing, we can count for these things a little bit more now, but still like your band leader is going to be freaking out if you're not there like half hour before downbeat, like what if we start early? Okay. Next thing that will increase your sort of hireability with us is talent. Like we said before, my drummer, who was like great guy, showed up on time, did all of the things right, but just, didn't quite have the talent. Showmanship. I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
Oh, yeah. You have to be entertaining on stage. You do not want to hire the band and P.S. people, this does not just apply to singers. I think that's the biggest mistake that I see is that people interpret that showmanship piece as just the singer. Like, I think most singers go into it understanding that there's a piece of showmanship to what they do, but I see a lot of players miss that mark. Not everybody. I know some great players who are super entertaining on stage.
So we've kind of at very early on, we sort of noticed, and they talk about, the whatever the 5 kind of personality sort of metrics and that sort of thing. And you have the introverts and the extroverts and all of this kind of thing. So we have kind of like embedded this into our kind of culture, which is we have Bonos and we have Edges, right? And like, and honestly, I'm as fascinated watching the Edge as I am Bono. Like Bono's going to climb up the, the trussing and like get up there and do Eddie Vedder and all of this kind of thing and really go nuts and wave the flag and everything like that. Whereas Edge is a little more enigmatic, right? And he's just like, he's at his microphone, he's doing his thing. He may like walk out and do the one little thing where he walks out the catwalk and walks back, but he's kind of like enigmatically rocking. And I remember we had a keyboard player that was just like, he was very like, like I said, like just, it was clear he was into the music. He was rocking out, but it wasn't like he was jumping up and down and he was like being a clown kind of thing. And there's time and place for that. But there was something fascinating about watching him. And we sort of built out from that. We're like, we love watching Paul. Like it's incredible. He's clearly into this, and there's something engaging about what he's doing without being, having to do the knee drops or anything like that, like be Nick Cave, and that was really cool. And there's a whole kind of history. Speaking of Nick Cave, like I was listening to his book the other day, and he was talking about like doing the knee drop and what a gift that is. And these kind of rock and roll moves, like he considers it an honor to be able to do this kind of stuff. And he'll talk about like Iggy Pop doing the knee drop and how he wears like knee pads and how like, even though like the most like punk rock guy is wearing knee pads, he's like, yeah, I don't wear knee pads because I feel like this is like a pantheon that I'm a part of. Like I get to do the Jim Morrison. Like I've been given this gift to be in front of a band to do these kind of moves, and I have to honor the pain or whatever that comes along with that. And I thought, wow, this is like there's a whole sort of language about being a showman and that he takes seriously. One of our singers, David, he's like an incredible dancer, and he does these moves when we're just like playing these tunes. And I was so impressed with that. He's not like super talkative on the mic either, but he does these like dance moves, and we've become like really good friends. And I remember him like just in passing us talking about, like what he's doing this weekend. He's like, well, I'm going blah, 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 my girlfriend and I, and then I'm going to my dance class. And it's like, dance class? He's like, yeah, I take like dance lessons. I was like, why do you take dance lessons? He's like, because like, it's part of being a performer. Like, and I've had other people, one thing that we're toying with is the idea of just setting up an improv teacher for our frontline, because all of the rules of theater and improv and yes and these kind of things, all you get on a mic and there might be a little bit of space to fill. And if you're talking over each other or denying each other, and all of these sort of the rules to improv comedy, I think are very like valuable for singers, people that have mics, to learn.
Agreed. And the other thing that I think is an important piece of that, I have to say we learned the hard way in our band, the most recent band I was in. Our band, there was lots of banter at the mic, right? And it was great. It was very entertaining if you could hear it, because some of the people who were participating in the banter were doing it and like they spoke clearly on the mic so that they brought the audience into it. And some people participated in the banter, but in a bit of an undertone and a bit of so the people on stage caught it, but the audience didn't. And it left them scratching their heads. They didn't know what was going on. And then it was no longer entertaining. It was just this weird, like, chatter between songs that nobody could follow. But we were in stitches on stage. You know what I mean? So there has to be that real consideration of like, now, granted, we were not playing like huge events and stuff. We were playing smaller rooms, but, well, not tiny rooms, but what ended up happening was the band enjoyed each other so much, and the hang between sets was the best part of the gig, that we were trying to entertain each other instead of focusing on entertaining the audience.
Right.
We were entertaining the audience musically, no question, but the banter part of it, there's a piece of that again nobody ever talks about, but that has to include your audience. You can't just entertain each other with that.
Yeah, that's totally wise. I often, is to speak to what you were saying about just like the different sort of levels. I mean, it seems pragmatic, but like if you're singing background vocals, which I often do, and because I'm the owner and band leader and all this kind of thing, if there's dead air, like I feel compelled to talk. And I remember like Erin, my business partner, coming and seeing the band. She's like, no one can hear you. You sing background vocals. So like
your level is down here.
Yeah. Don't feel like, you're, leading the crew here on
Yes.
banter. Like, this is, it's tough to, unless you have a sound man that's kind of like on it, like it's, you got to be situationally aware, which I'm often not.
Well, but I think that's really common on stage because we can
Yeah.
all hear each other in the monitors because we've got that queued up for our own performance purposes. But we kind of forget that the levels out in the house are entirely different, and you're not going to hear the keyboard player's mic audibly for conversation.
Totally.
Yeah.
Here's some other sort of things that will
Yeah.
increase your hireability. Learning background vocals.
Yes.
And that's an important part of, our gig. And we have some singers that will come to us and they're like, I'm not really good with that. And I was like, I'm not really good with that either, but it was a muscle that I learned over by being in this band, like singing background vocals. It became like, and now I'm fairly competent at it, and it's fun. Like, I can now hear those parts. But we make it very easy for all of our singers. What we do is I literally transcribe all of the background vocals. I record each part slightly, louder on the original recording so everybody can hear their particular part. So we have like BG1, BG2, and BG3 and all of those different
So
parts.
you really make the learning tracks easy. Yeah.
It's your gig to screw up, Sarah.
There it is.
Adherence to policies and procedures. We don't have a lot of these. Like, we're not like, even when it comes to like drinking and stuff like that, we're not one of those bands that's like, you're not allowed. But if it becomes a problem, then, we do like, and I, I have suffered from, like, I'm in recovery. I've been, I haven't drank in a long time. And, I come from a long line of alcoholics. So I know, so I had to, learn the hard way. I've been on many gigs where it was like, oh, great, we're going out of town. Let's go get some, get some beer. Let's have a few drinks beforehand. And, this career is sort of like allows people to get into that behavior if they want to, and some people are very good at like hiding that stuff, and it'll get them into trouble. It'll eventually like kind of catch up to them. So even though like we have these sort of things like, when it comes to drinking, we'll just sort of like, if you're a problem, and you get out of control, that's it. But we sort of trust you to be an adult and your limits and all of that kind of thing. And so like our policies and procedures are like fairly like, it's your gig to kind of screw up again, so we treat you as
take responsibility.
That's right. We treat you as an adult until you cross the line. And if you don't adhere to those policies and procedures, well, that's it, and I've had to have uncomfortable conversations with people, with 150 musicians and techs in our, bullpen, just a numbers game alone is going to bring up a bunch of people that have, addiction problems, a bunch of people that have mental health problems, a bunch of people that have, what was I going to say? Just sort of like personality disorders, like, so you have to sort of account for all of those things and be ready for them. And we have, by the way, it's kind of paid off sometimes too, to stick with people. We've had, because oftentimes, and we can get into conversations about free will and that sort of thing, but like, and genetics and everything like that, like oftentimes even addictions aren't necessarily people's fault, but certainly when it comes to things like managing mental illness and stuff like that, like we've had people like take a break and then come back and just be like, thank you for sticking past me. Like, I realize, they maybe walked off stage, on a gig because of a mental illness. And then we said, like, that's unacceptable. We can't have that. But when you're ready and you're in a better place, like we're willing to sit down and have a talk. Or, you get drunk on a gig and make a fool of yourself. Well, we're going to bench you, or we're going to give you some time to sort of like, but when I see your 100-day chip or whatever it is, then we can talk.
Yep.
And I wish some people had given me that ultimatum,
Yeah.
at certain points in my life, and just said, like, you're out of control.
Yeah.
And we can't have that.
I think that music is curious in that it is one of the few industries, frankly, it's the only one I can think of at the moment, but I'm sure it's not actually the only one, where it is acceptable to drink on the job. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it is fully front facing. You don't think twice when you see the musician on stage with a beer in his hand or whatever.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that also sometimes translates to things that maybe aren't so forward facing, but are, I don't want to say accepted, but not nearly as not accepted as they should be. Like lots of illicit drug use and stuff, where, uh, we've had that. I've had that situation too, where we had somebody sub into the band and they were not cutting it because I found out later they'd been doing lines of coke. And you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, that is why things are going sideways here. But it's like music is one of those industries where that is way more prevalent in our industry than it is if you're, I don't know, a vet.
There's there's a unique relationship, especially with alcohol, but drugs too. There's a unique relationship with live performance and the audience, and it works kind of both ways as well, because I'll often get like some of our musicians that will be like have to manage drunk people,
Yes.
like people will come up on stage, and we do this dance because we do want people drinking. Let's be honest here. Like,
That's our
we do
job.
want, we do, to sell alcohol.
Yep.
In some cases, not necessarily in a wedding, but we do want, like, there's an element of celebration that comes with just sort of, in vita veritas or whatever it is, right? Like, people let their guard down and give over to this experience, and some of that lubricant is often, and actually, ironically, like, we've played things for AA where the entire crowd has been completely sober. It's been some of the wildest parties that we've ever played too. So it's not
That's pretty cool,
necessarily, it's not necessarily a component, but more often than not, it has to be. So I say this to our musicians too, like, there are some crowds that want us to drink, like to be part of the party. And that can sometimes be a great thing too. You get the singers a little bit, they used to do in the 70s, they do these talk shows, and in the green room, they'd get, Dean Martin all lubed up. So he gets on stage with Johnny Carson. It becomes far more provocative kind of thing. And there can be that, element as well. Like, we're talking about showmanship. Like, sometimes the guard comes down, you have this incredibly powerful experience while you're drunk or high or whatever as a performer kind of thing. And even some genres of music are based around that, like the electronic stuff is all based around, ecstasy and these kind of things. So I'm not going to be a prude about it and just say, like, it can never happen, but it has to be nuanced and it's complex. So that's why we sort of say, like, we'll allow this, but it needs to be, like, it can't be a problem. Like, do what you need to do, but if we start to see it's, you're not showing up, or you're gone, when it's time to go on stage, and you're, out back doing something or other, or, as in your experience, if the guy's not cutting it because he's, whacked out of his brain. But so it's a dance that you have to sort of, you kind of do, and it is complicated, and it's all just sort of, we'll know it when we see it kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, everything that you have gone through in your list of, like, here are the things that your handbook, which, by the way, you should probably just at some point actually write a book, because there's like so much great information in your brain and that has been born out of your experience. But at the end of the day, it can all be summed up in one sentence. And that is, be the easiest guy to work with.
Mm. Yeah.
Which means do your job in a great way, do all the things you're supposed to do, and be easygoing and chill. And I don't mean that in a way that's like to your own detriment.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But all things being equal, you're going to work with the guy that's the easiest one to work with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely. And we think of the great players that we all, in Vancouver that we all love and always call. Is like, that is the component,
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And you said it earlier, actually, too. I mean, you can extrapolate that. It's on a personal level, be the easiest guy to work with. And as a band, when you're looking at working with your clients, you want to be the easiest band to work with.
Yeah.
From that sort of management organizational point of view, because that is super attractive to a client.
That's right. And I think like that was a lot of our success. Like I worked with a band that was like extraordinarily diva and like had all of these demands of the client. I will push back a little bit on something there, which is your heart surgeon,
Yep.
right, is an expert.
Yes.
In this sort of thing, right? And you do not have, I mean, it wouldn't even occur to you to have thoughts on what they're doing,
Yeah.
For their job. In fact, you would, if that person was a complete asshole, it wouldn't matter because they're the best heart surgeon. Your only goal is to just like survive. So from that perspective, but when it comes to things that we have a unique relationship with, whether it be food, you go to a restaurant, you're like, I don't want green peppers in this, or this, I don't want something spicy. And it's like, the chef is like, no, I'm an expert. I know what you want. This will taste good. Just trust me, kind of thing. Well, no, that's not necessarily the case. Like, I have specific sort of flavors that I like. So music is kind of in that weird realm where people have a relationship to it and may have, opinions about what the band might be doing and all this kind of thing. So, but there has to be a line too. So with my clients, there's a line that I have where I'm like, we're not going to do that. That's dumb. You don't know what you're talking about. I know what you want. I've done this enough times. And by the way, I would even say that to the young me who like didn't know what they were doing. I look back and there's certain songs that I would call or whatever that, I thought were going to totally work, which is just like, why? Like now I'm embarrassed to even think that would ever work, kind of thing. So it took me a long time to get this kind of experience. So to say, just blanketly like be the easiest for your client to work with, it's like, yes, until we need to do heart surgery,
Agreed.
musically.
Yeah. It's, I mean, being the easiest to work with doesn't mean being a pushover. And it doesn't mean not doing the best job of your job. In fact, I would offer up that I think that what you're talking about, where you as the expert know, like you have a better understanding of what is going to work and what isn't. And when it comes to that place of, no, that's dumb, we're not going to do that. That action, which I'm guessing you probably don't say quite in those words, but maybe I'm wrong.
I have literally said that.
I love that. Love that.
If it's like some of my corporate clients that we work with a lot, I was like, that is dumb.
Yeah,
that's a
probably
bad idea.
Not to the bride, though, right?
Yeah, probably not. To the bride.
But if that's the line you've gotten to, then you offering up your expert opinion and saying your event is not, I know this from my experience, and you're hiring me for my expertise. And I know that if we go with that thing that you are suggesting, that is going to make your event less successful.
That's right.
I actually would offer up that is a way in which you are still being the easiest guy to work with, because you are giving them the information in an appropriate way to make that decision. And it's not just because you're a jackass and you don't want to learn that song, right?
That's right.
It's because you actually know that song or that detail of whatever they're asking of you isn't going to fit well with the overall structure of what you're putting together.
That's right. I'll give you an example of this just so we're not sort of speaking vaguely, but one that comes to mind, and it happens actually quite a bit, is having musicians do Pied Piper-esque things where we're leading the crowd from one area to another area. We've experimented with this a couple times. We've had clients that are like, I visited New Orleans once and saw this brass band and it was amazing. So we want to honor that and have like a second line. And it's like, okay, all right. And we've done things like that where, we've tried to harness, 75 drunk people with a brass band to try to get them from one area. And it just like, it becomes like a nightmare. It's like, you don't want this, trust me. Or you want people that do this. Like there are specific brass bands that like, this is their job. But to try to force a singer to be on a wireless that has to walk 200 yards and we need to set up specific wireless paddles so that they don't like go out, or like we now have to have the a snare sort of mount for our drummer and we need somebody playing the bass drum, and it's like all of these sort of complications, and like clip-on mics for the horn players and all this kind of thing. It's like, trust me, you don't want this. There's people that do this better, or we can do something else to try to make this happen. And if they continue to push on me, then I can always just drop the hammer and say, no, we don't do that.
No, you're dumb.
And I'm sorry. Yeah.
You're not dumb. That's dumb.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be an example where, we've tried it, and we know from experience that this is tricky, or there are better ways to kind of do this. Or they're better people to do this.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid point that is maybe worth talking about a little bit. And that, for younger up and comers, is sometimes there are times when the best choice is to pass on the gig because it is not the right fit. And I think when
did that this morning.
Yeah. Well, I think when we're young and hungry, I mean, I know I certainly did, took gigs that again, example, I am a female who sings in a male range. I can't sing all the high female stuff. I mean, I can sing all the high Bee Gees and whatever. It's not that I don't have that part in my voice, but as a lead singer, I can't sing the high female stuff because that's not where my voice sits. But I subbed in, or I can remember subbing in to a band because somebody got sick, and so I was subbing into a band that I didn't know, but I needed the money, so I said yes, and I showed up, and it was like a pub gig, right?
Right.
And so it was guys I'd never played with before, showed up to the gig, and none of them were high level enough musicians that they could transpose on the spot.
Right.
So I sang everything in my head voice all night long, and it was awful. And what I should have done is gotten more information and passed on the gig.
Yeah. That's an incredibly valuable lesson, especially, like, remember, as a musician, you're just, constant brand. Like you are, you're just a constant advertisement. How people hear you is what your value is. And if you're not, putting your strongest foot forward always, or just like, they always say, you got to step out of your comfort zone. Not when you're, like, if you want a long career, you sort of understand your strengths and work on your weaknesses and present them as such.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I would take a classical guitar gig. I mean, it would just be, I would make a fool of myself trying to do that. So even though I might be hungry and might be able to do kind of a passable job, it's like, no, there are this will actually, if somebody that is in a position to hire me hears me do that, they'll be like,
yes,
nope.
It can really shoot you in the ass, right? Like, yeah, knowing when to pass is something that you usually learn the hard way, unfortunately. But I think it's something really worth thinking about, because there are moments when, like you said, I'm not going to ask you to give super duper detailed, but like this morning, where you know that whatever, there's a client who approached you and it was not the right fit, so you took a pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean, I don't want to say that happens all the time. We can do, we can cover a lot of bases for music entertainment that people want, but when people ask us for like we were doing an 80s night and we want like all 80s songs, I was like we could probably do that, but it would be like a lot of work to sort of get it to that point. We're probably going to get hired that night for a non all 80s night. So I don't, as a rule, I often don't drift into these sort of
Yeah.
specialization things.
And there are other bands who actually do that. So in
Totally.
the
So
spirit of
we'll always recommend
in the
those. Yeah.
spirit of community, which is another thing to talk about here, because music can be kind of a cutthroat industry. It can be pretty competitive, but in the spirit of community, that's the other thing that with age and hopefully some wisdom, I moved into, if I'm not the right person for that gig, you know what? I probably know a bunch of people who are, and I would love to pass the work on to them. So let me
Yeah.
connect
80s
you.
band. Talk to Mark Olekson. He'll
Right?
if he can't do it, somebody else he knows will be
Yes,
able to do it.
exactly.
So like, yeah, exactly that kind of thing. So that happens quite a bit to us, and so I know that we have strengths that are sort of beyond that. And it's not just because I'm lazy and don't want to learn, 3 hours of 80s tunes. I think that'd be really fun. And I think the band is getting to the point now where they'd be more into that sort of thing, because we've been playing a lot of the same kind of like, 100 and 150 songs now for a few years, that, the idea of like doing an all 80s night, oh, well, hey, maybe that might be fun to do an offshoot of that. But like at this point it's like, well, we're going to do our strength probably that night. Somebody else is going to hire us that night, and we will beget like more events that'll cater to that strength.
And here's another piece that I think that from the client side, they often don't realize when they're asking for something that is out of your purview, like asking for an all 80s night, that okay, are you guys capable of learning 3 hours of all 80s music? 100%. No question. You guys could do that, absolutely. Is it worth the time for you and all of your musicians to spend the learning time to learn 3 hours of music for performance for their, you know, whatever it is? I don't have any idea what you pay, but so let's say it's a $500 gig.
Yep.
To learn 3 hours of brand new music for one $500 gig is a fuck ton of learning, which is
Yes.
fine if that is going to turn into a thing that you guys do and is going to get used again.
Yep.
However, if it's a one-off, that is way too expensive for, like, that learning time is it's not worth the trade-off.
Especially like the level of learning that we would
Exactly.
want, yeah.
Because you're not looking for the generalist, you're looking for the details.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. So yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I think about that too. When we first started, speaking of music learning, like when we first started, we would learn people's like first dance, we'd learn their father-daughter dance, we'd learn their mother-son dance, and it could be anything under the sun. So every gig was at least 3 learns in addition to the normal dance set. And this was like kind of attractive for us to sell to our clients, because not a lot of other bands would be doing that. And then it just became like over the course of a summer having to, keep track of all these songs that you're never ever going to play again in many cases. And we would say like, hey, we'll learn any song. And it's like we ended up learning like Muse songs for people's like first dance, and it's like, these long sort of big huge, or Queen songs or something like that maybe we'll never play again. So we kind of put a bit of a kibosh on that, saying that we will still pick up one song learn.
Yeah.
Usually people use that on their first dance. And then we have a list of like father, daughter, mother, son songs that most people like, they're not that passionate about. And oftentimes they want sort of suggestions for their mother, son, or father, daughter dance. So we have this big list that they can kind of choose from anyways. That is extensive. Like there's quite a few songs on there, and it doesn't overload the band.
In your book.
That's right. Yeah. And then for anybody joining the band for the first time, we don't rehearse. So I want to try to, first of all, I don't know what kind of level they're at. Like maybe I've seen them play, or maybe they've been recommended by somebody. So what I do is I pay everybody a $200 fee just for learning all of our material, which, considering they have to learn like 80 songs or something like that, is not that much, but at least it's something.
But it's more than anybody else pays for learning.
That's right. And we're big enough in an organization where I can sort of eat that money. And so if it doesn't work out for this particular player, well, they get their, whatever it is, $500 plus $200 for learning. They walk away with $700. Yep. And you and I have both done, far more work for far less money, than learning 80 tunes for $700. That's actually, I've done, 2-week runs of musicals for less money.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't feel necessarily, bad after, maybe it doesn't work out. They can let go, but more often than not, that creates for the musicians some sort of incentive too. Like they feel like their time is being appreciated. Like, okay, well, this guy's like, honoring this work that I'm going to put in. It's not just going to be for nothing. And so they do put in the work. So it's kind of win-win at the end of it. So, and I played in a band where it was like you were learning, oh Jesus, like 20, 25 songs a week that you'll never ever play again. You might not even play them on the gig. Like it was just like the band leader was a bass player. So it was just like, let's be honest here, learning bass line, I'd probably be, getting my musicians to add 25 songs a week if I only had to learn the bass line for these tunes, kind of thing. But like, oftentimes when you sit down with a song and you're the guitar player, it's like, in some cases, there's 3 guitars, and you have to sort of go, well, okay, how do I
amalgamate them into one set of hands?
Exactly. Yeah. And so like, okay, so what is the important part? How do I do this? Or a keyboard player, you're spending so much time trying to get the sounds, like exactly. So, or the singer, you're trying to learn all of these different, phonetics and that sort of thing, especially if it's like a newer song that maybe has a rap or something like that. So these are like real time commitments that you're putting into this stuff. So I don't take that stuff lightly. And we create kind of a situation where, because I used to anyways, like write the horn charts for things as well. I used to, as I was saying, like I used to transcribe all the background vocals. I would transcribe the song. I would have to figure out all the guitar parts. For me, the band leader, the guy that's adding this music, it's an investment of my time. So I don't take that stuff lightly, like adding a song is a big deal inside one. And hopefully it's not going to be like, oh, everybody just learned the song and we never end up playing it. That happens occasionally. Like, maybe we'll try it at sound check and it just didn't quite hit, or we played it one time and it was like emptied out the dance floor or something like that. So I say and if we're doing a wedding where they have a very specific request that they must have, So if we have a song that we're adding, it's a very specific client request, I'll charge the client. So I'll say anything beyond this one song, if you really want it, then it'll cost. I'll have to listen to the song. We have like, beginner, intermediate, and advanced level songs. So if it's, fucking Bohemian Rhapsody or something like that, it's going to be an advanced song, I remember this one client, there was a high-level Microsoft employee on the board, and they just had endless amounts of money. And so they're like, half the wedding is from New Jersey. So it's like, you have to play some Springsteen. Specifically, you have to play Rosalita. And if you've ever heard Rosalita before, it's like 8 minutes long. It's this like through composed. It just like there's no repeats at all. It's like this epic Springsteen tune. I love that song. And I was like, okay, this is going to be amazing, but I have to charge you, $500 and pay everybody, at least $100 each just for learning this one song and write out horn charts and everything like that. And we have never played it again, but we fucking crushed that song and the audience went crazy. It was amazing.
Yep.
And conversely, I had a client who was like, you have to learn. He was like, we have to have How Can We Be Lovers If We Can't Be Friends by Michael Bolton. And I was like, really? And he's like, trust me. It's like people will go crazy. It was like a college thing. And I didn't charge him because we already knew his first dance and everything like that. So I made the band learn this and it was absolutely the right call. It was like,
who knew?
It was incredible. Like these people went absolutely crazy when we started playing it. And like to this day, like Ashley who sang it, like we still text each other, like quotes from the song because it was just like for us, like how ridiculous to play this like Michael Bolton song, but it was so much fun. And
I thought you were heading into a place where you were going to tell me. So I told him, no, that's dumb. And we're not going to do that.
I've done that too. I've done that. In fact, I've told people about Bohemian Rhapsody. I just really like Queen doesn't even play Bohemian Rhapsody. Are you high?
Yeah.
Like they have we can get the video screen up and do the recording like they do, but like, like we're not going to do it. Sorry.
We did Bohemian Rhapsody when we were playing a gig and it was painful. It was one of those gigs where it didn't matter what we did. Nobody would get on the dance floor. Didn't matter.
Right.
Didn't matter. We tried everything. And Mark Olekson, God bless him, he just decided that he was going to start playing Name That Tune with the audience, except sort of in reverse. He was like, suggest a song and we'll play it. Which actually became a thing that we did a lot in our band, but somebody called Bohemian Rhapsody.
I love that.
And he started to play it.
Of course. Oh my God.
We didn't just empty the dance floor. I mean, that was already empty, but we kind of emptied the room. You don't jam Bohemian Rhapsody. Come on now.
Well, I mean, if you've got like you and who else, like Saf and like Mark, and it's like, Alex, if anybody could possibly pull it off, it might be you guys.
It would have probably been Scott and Tucker, and who would have been on drums? Joel Fountain.
Amazing. Well, yeah. So
I mean,
you've got like
people,
four of the best singers in the city. So it's like, yeah, you're getting close.
But even so. Anyway, Rob, this has been, I feel like we could just go on for hours and hours and hours. It's fascinating talking to you. I love talking through this stuff, but where can people find you? Where can people find the website, the socials, all the things?
So the website is side1.ca, and we're really proud of our website. We've got a bunch of
it's a beautiful website.
Videos on there. It's really cool. We've spent a lot of money on that. Was actually a very important thing that we did in the very beginning. Is like don't chintz on the marketing, and so we ended up spending a lot of money on that, and it worked out. It was a good idea. All the socials, it's at Side One Band, all lowercase. And that's been annoying because people call us Side One Band now. And I was like, no, you don't say Rolling Stones Band or U2 Band or, Coldplay Band, but people call us Side One Band. And, but we're just Side One. We're just Side One. But anyways, that's all of our socials, and we're proud of that too. Like Erin does a great job. I don't know, she's got an eye for that kind of thing. So yeah, you can follow us there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. Not once, but twice. Like we got the really epic extended mix here.
This is the dance mix.
Truly. Yeah. Most interviews become 2 episodes. I have the feeling we're going to become 4 episodes.
Oh my God. I'm into it, Sarah.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. You have made it to the end, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. That was the 4th episode of my conversation with Rob Hamilton of Side One. And if you didn't catch the prior episodes, they are absolutely worth going back and having a listen to. So they are the episodes immediately prior to this. This was the fourth in the series of 4 with yours truly and Rob Hamilton. And I hope you got as much out of it as I did, because I think it was a super valuable conversation. And I look forward to